Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Scholars Avenue podcast. This is the very first episode. Yeah. We hope this is the first of many episodes where we speak to interesting people on campus about academics, societies, life, and much more. So, here you go. I'm Vivek. We have Vineet and Manav, and we have Shikhar Patranabis.
Yeah.
So, hi,
Hi.
Shikhar.
Hi.
To start off, to just give you a brief introduction of Shikhar, he was our IR1 for the year 2015. He graduated from this computer science engineering department with a CGPA of
87.
9.87. And he got the president's gold medal. So, yeah, we're here to talk about his decision to stay back in India, specifically in Kharagpur, to continue his research and about life and like more. Let's see. Uh, so, Shikhar, to start off with, I think this is like probably the $1 million question. Everybody's asking you this. So, what, like, if you can point at one thing, what was the single most biggest difference? Like, basically, the reason why you chose to stay back in Kharagpur.
Yeah, I think the reason why I chose to stay back in Kharagpur was because I felt I could do what I wanted to do here itself. I was planning to take up research right through my third and fourth years, and I really was looking for a particular area where I could possibly commit myself to do a PhD, because doing a PhD, a commitment to a particular field is important. You need to really like it in order to be able to do research in it. And I found that here when I was doing my BTech project, and I felt that I was doing my BTech project under Professor Devdi Mukhopadhyay in the Secured Embedded Architecture Lab, and my work was essentially on cryptography and hardware security. So I really felt that I was really enjoying my work here, and I had actually done a sizable amount of work, and I felt that there were a lot of challenges and a lot of problems that I could possibly solve, and I really did not want to switch. And at the same time, I was very comfortable in the environment I was working. I had a very good rapport with my guide. I was helped a lot by the seniors in the lab, the research scholars who are currently working, and I really liked the environment, and I felt that we could really uh, do something. We could really help. We were already doing a lot of good work, and I believe we can extend that even further. And I felt I could make a contribution, and that was essentially the reason why I decided to stay there.
Okay. How do you think you weighed uh, starting over, as you said, in a new place,
Yeah.
as opposed to like meeting probably people who are like the top contributors in that field
Yeah.
in the world?
So one thing that which is very important in case of a PhD is your relationship with your guide. And one risk that of course it is true that if you go outside India, for example, you would possibly get better infrastructure, maybe in some cases more exposure. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of pros and cons, but one of the biggest you know one of the biggest risks that you have to take if you go outside is that you go into an environment where there you are not really aware of the way in which the work goes on there. You would have to adjust. And one of the most important factors for me, at least, is I should always have a very open relationship with my guide, because he's the one person who is really the one who is helping me at the end of the day. And I really feel that any PhD scholar should have a very one-to-one open relationship with his or her advisor. And that I really found here. I mean, that was the main motivating factor behind my decision. And yeah, the other important thing was that I was already doing a fairly important amount of work, and I had already had a certain background in what I wanted to do. And I thought that continuing here would allow me to explore a lot of problems. It would give me more time, basically, to explore other stuff other than what I had already done, and possibly gradually identify an area where I would really like to concentrate. And yeah, that was the main reason why I essentially chose to stay here.
Okay. So, do you think if you go to like a university abroad,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sure you would have had an admit in any university abroad. So,
Yeah.
do you think the pressures of like just the name of that university being associated to you will somehow restrict the amount of exploration you do during your PhD?
No, I think that it is always important and it is always good to to explore. I mean, that is of course true, and I'm not saying that if you go to an outside university you won't do that. I mean, you would get a lot of exposure probably. You see, one of the very different ways in which things work outside as compared to in India is that when you go to a research group outside, for example in the US, you would find that there are a lot of people who are working in a lot of different areas, and each one of them has their own expertise, and there are a lot of people with varied experiences working together to build something. I mean, that is, I think, a culture which to some extent we don't have here, and that is probably one of the primary reasons why we still seem to have lesser productivity in research. When we talk about productivity, we would talk about two things: either we would talk about publications, or we would talk about actual research output that is getting translated into industrial and final outputs that we see. So I would say that that one of the reasons why we are lacking here, or one of the reasons we don't really seem to be on a par with universities outside, is that we probably don't have that kind of a structure, that inbuilt structure which they seem to have, and they have developed it over a period of time. And I do believe that people will definitely benefit if they go there. I mean, that is quite obvious. But at the same time, I feel that I mean, when you work here, when you work in India, there are a lot of opportunities that you get. There are, for one thing, I mean, in research at least, it is very important that you have a good relationship with your co-workers. And when you work here, for example, like you are dealing with people who have also stayed in the campus for a long time, and it is important to be one-on-one, because at the end of the day, research is all about group work. I mean, you cannot just sit in a room and say that I'm going to do research. It's about group work. It's about working with people, knowing different things, accumulating stuff, and then applying them. So I think that is one of the advantages that people get when they go to universities outside. But at the same time, it is not true that that kind of an environment does not exist here. It does exist, and it is in fact very much prevalent in many of the labs that we have, for example in our department and even in other departments. The other thing is that exposure to international standards of research, it is not mandatory that you always need to work in an university outside in order to be able to know what's going on there. We have a lot of collaborations. We go for international conferences. We are always we have a lot of projects from companies in Intel. For example, I myself am working on a project which is sponsored by Intel US, and we are working on very relevant problems. So it is not that you don't get that kind of exposure here, but yeah, I mean, the kind of exposure you would probably get outside, you won't obviously get here. But I think there are notwithstanding all these disadvantages, I think there is a lot of scope for work.
Right.
And I felt that there is no major hindrance to what you can do if you stay back here.
Right, exactly. Also, so I wanted to ask this question, which predates all the current work that you're doing. So, did you always want to become a computer science engineer pre JEE days, or was it something that happened like because you got a really good rank?
Yeah. So I was actually interested in computer science. I mean, that was the reason why I took up computer science and engineering. So yeah, I was actually interested in coding and stuff right from my school days. So I had an exposure to it, and I knew that I always wanted to work with computers. So yeah, focus on research essentially. Before I came here, I didn't really understand so much about what was the scope, and what differences does it make to you if you work in the industry versus if you work in the research. And I feel I'm lucky that I've got exposure to all kinds of things. When I did my internship after my third year, I did it with Microsoft. I did it in a corporate environment, and I was exposed to pretty much the kind of work I would have done if I had, for example, accepted the PPO there.
Right.
And at the same time, I also had a very successful exposure to research. So in my second year and even during my third and fourth years, I did a lot of projects with a lot of people. I mean, I was involved in a project with the maths department. I did a term project during one of my courses, which finally turned into a good publication. I continued that work. I was doing my BTech project work as well. So I really could compare and contrast the kinds of work that I was doing in either cases, and I did feel that ultimately I liked the research environment more as compared to the corporate environment. I know it's a matter of personal choice.
Right.
I mean, I don't think all people will agree with me on this, and all people I mean, it's expected. I mean, people have different expectations, but I really felt that for one thing, research allows me to define my own problems and solve them in my own way.
Right.
And I think that was what attracted me the
Right.
most.
It's interesting that you say that like about personal preferences. So I wanted to like explore this a bit. So I mean, also given that you're from the computer science department,
Right.
so like the allure of like a really high-paying job is always there. So, like, do you think it was completely sort of a personal choice, or do you think you can identify like some things that happened here which like probably changed your course or made you more sure of what you wanted to do or
No,
something?
actually, it's not really about the job. I think it's more about like when you, for example, when we graduate from KGP after 4 years and we go into a job. Uh, I mean, job opportunities exist at all levels. You could do a postgraduate and also go into a job. You could do after that you could do a master's and go into a job. You could do a PhD and go into a job as well. I mean, it's not that if you, for example, there is this what I would say, some kind of a stigma that's associated with PhD, that after you do a PhD, all you do is become a prof or something. So it's not true. I mean, you would see that there are a lot of people in the industry who have actually completed their PhDs from very good universities, and they have actually done very good PhDs. And if you look at top companies today, if you look at Google, if you look at Facebook, if you look at Microsoft, they all have these separate divisions called development and research. And research is mostly populated by people who have actually done their PhDs, and that is quite obvious. That is required, because if you were to develop new technology, you need to be really aware of what technology is useful and what is being developed currently. And for that you need to go through a certain period of training, which I don't think 4 years of undergraduate provide you. So I felt that if I'm not saying that I don't want to, or I'm averse to industry. What I'm saying is that I would probably like to go into the industry and make an impact once I have sufficient knowledge or sufficient expertise to really be able to contribute.
Right.
And I felt that for that, my 4 years of undergraduate, wonderful though it was, is I don't think it was sufficient.
Right.
From my point of view. So
Right.
that was actually my point of view. My point
Okay.
of view was that if I was to make an impact somewhere, then I would do that after I had spent, say, 3 or 4 years working in that field, knowing the state of the art, knowing people who are actually doing good work, and then exposing myself.
Right.
And I felt that that the major difference between going into a job at the undergraduate level and at the research level is probably that in a research level, you have spent a sufficient amount of time on a certain thing, and something about it. At the undergrad level, it's more like you have waded through a lot of stuff, and you have gained some knowledge and you have some abilities, and probably you would be playing at a lower level as
Okay.
compared to, I mean, one thing is for sure, that there are positions in companies that you will never be getting to if you are just an undergrad. Okay, so one thing is that is of course true.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at some of, for example, we are looking at a lot of people who are making an impact in today's industry who are from India. If you look at Satya Nadella, if you look at Sundar Pichai, for example, these people are not undergrads at the end of the day. And that is quite simple, because if you have to have the vision to lead a company, I think you need more than just 4 years of training.
Right.
And that is I think that is what inspired me a lot. I mean, these people are really passionate about the work that they do, and to get that passion, I think you need to spend a certain amount of time with the technology that you are working on, and with the kind of work that you want to do.
Right.
And I that was what actually drove me.
Okay.
To be honest.
So also like, I mean, this is I think most of us agree that like the general air of like research in Kharagpur is one of like disillusionment and
Yeah.
like disappointment to a certain extent.
Uh-huh.
So like, what do you think is the biggest reason, and like what do you think can be done to remedy this?
So I'm not very sure about the reason. I mean, the few years of experience that I have had, like say I have been working in a lab for about 1.5 years now, let's say, and what I have felt is that to some extent there is this big gap between the undergrads and the research community, and I think this is something that does not exist in most universities outside India. I mean, the reason is pretty simple. I mean, let's be very blunt about this. Undergrads probably get better job opportunities, and the undergrad population here is of course a lot larger, and IIT is primarily known for its undergrad. The JEE is probably one of the toughest exams, and it sets a really high bar. Unfortunate though it is, the bar doesn't seem to be that high always when it comes to the postgrad admissions, or possibly the PhD admissions, for example. But I also want to point out that there is a lot of very good research work that happens in KGP, and possibly we are not able to channel that out to the undergraduate population so much to be able to excite them. If you look at universities in US, for example, you will find that a lot of undergraduates actually contribute to the research output of the institute.
Okay.
And it is never, the undergrads always form the largest population base of any institute, and if they don't contribute to the research, then obviously that institute is never going to flourish. If you look at universities outside, for example MIT, Stanford, people start working in the labs of their institute itself by the second and third years, and they do make sizable contributions, whereas here you would probably see people starting to think about jobs or probably about shifting outside. So there is, you see, somehow the doing of the work actually seems to be a second priority as compared to, either you are going to shift to some foreign university and we seem to spend a lot of time on applications and stuff, whereas if you are going for a job you seem to work more on the interviews. But finally, very few of us actually concentrate on actual stuff, for example on our projects, on the actual quality of the work that we are doing. If you look at the output of KGP in terms of research, it could go up volumes if the undergrad population starts involving themselves in it. And there are opportunities. People here are actually willing to work with undergrads, but somehow it doesn't happen. So I, for example, am currently working with 3 undergrads from my department, and I somehow seem to have that rapport with them because I myself was an undergrad here. That is not generally true about the research population, but still I feel that if somehow we could bridge that gap, I think that first of all, research in KGP is going to improve a lot, it's going to benefit a lot. And secondly, I think that air of disillusionment that seems to be surrounding the prospects of research here will definitely go away, because it is not true. I mean, a lot of very, very good jobs are offered to the research people here. And then I think that's where I think, for example, Scholars Avenue could play a role. Scholars Avenue could make the undergrads aware about what is the actual picture of research, and avenues like these could actually make people aware of what is going on versus what is viewed,
right,
or what is thought of,
right,
and that is not always necessarily true.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. The other thing that so I was talking to a few friends of mine, I think recently. So the general opinion that we don't involve ourselves in again just interesting things during our undergrad with respect to our engineering disciplines is that it's not expected.
Right.
And you can very well spend really happy 4 years or 5 years,
Mhm.
and you can still maintain a high CGPA by not doing much.
Yeah.
And generally profs also don't expect
Yeah.
stuff from you, originality and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which contributes to people choosing the easiest way out and then not doing anything.
Yeah,
So do you
so-
think that?
Yeah, I do believe. I mean, see, I don't expect that everybody is going to have a flair for research. For example, not everybody is willing to do research, and it is not that if you are coming to IIT, I would expect all of you, or anybody who is coming into IIT is going to be expected to really plan their careers in a way that they would go into research, or really do something technologically sound. But I think there are people here who are willing to do that. I mean, there are of course people here who have different goals. For example, people here could be willing to go into management. People here could be willing to go into finance. People here could be willing to start form their own startups. But I respect all of that. I mean, that is of course required. That is the variety which makes KGP the place it is. And I also feel that as an undergrad, you should not always or all the time be involving yourself in academics. I personally was a governor of a dramatic society, and a dramatic society had very little to do with what I was doing as part of my project work or part of my academic life. But at the same time, I mean, I feel that the problem seems to be that people don't believe that they can work here. That is a problem. It's that you could have a choice. You could choose not to work, but that is one thing. But the other thing is people seem to feel that you cannot do something in KGP. That is something I feel is not right.
Okay.
I mean, and that is something. I mean, it's on part of the faculty as well as on part of the student community. I think this needs to go. I mean, if a guy is willing to work, if he is willing to contribute, he should be allowed to contribute. And in that case, I think he will be. I mean, there are opportunities which are available. There are facilities which are available. Nobody says that an undergrad can't walk into a lab and start working. I mean, I, for example, after my graduation, when people got to know that I was staying back here, 3 or 4 of my juniors came and said that, oh, so you're staying back. So did you actually enjoy your work here, or did you actually get the opportunity to do what you wanted to do? And I said, yes. I mean, it's obviously there. The infrastructure is there for you to use. But if you don't use it, then or if you may choose not to use it, as I keep saying, but don't think that you cannot use it.
Right.
Or don't think that if you want to do a research or a good summer internship, you would have to go to the US. You can stay back here and do as good work. possibly better work. I mean, if you look at some of the internships that people have done outside, research internships, not all of them have been very fruitful or successful. And yet somehow, all of us tend to have this tendency to believe that if we go outside, somehow by magic we are going to start doing great work. It's all the same funda. I mean, when people go outside, they are exposed to a strict environment, and they start working. It's if we can develop that strictness here, I mean, if we can develop that strictness on our own, I think we would probably be doing better work here. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
So coming back to your point about, and this is something which is close to us as well. Coming back to your point about research having needing to be covered more often. So do you have any suggestions on how we can go about that? How we can make research interesting to other people? Because as you said, there was a big gap between the undergraduate and the postgraduate community, and most of that comes in the language that is often used, and the language is very cryptic. So how do you think we can bring that research to an undergraduate community?
Yeah, so I believe that I mean, this could be done at many levels. I think for one thing, I think IITKGP is trying to make the research that it is doing visible to the entire student community, and I think that's a good thing. I think there is a plan for building a new website where you could actually look at the various research activities that are going on, and all the people who are trying to do things, build technology that is actually going to make a change. I think the other aspect of this is that maybe to some extent the research scholars or the research community here does not always find a voice with which it can communicate with the undergrad community. I mean, the undergraduates seem to have a community of their own, and there is very little that comes in. Even when I was a student here, for example, I did not know most of the researchers of my department, whom I know now, for example. So I think what we could do possibly is that one of the suggestions that I do have is that when scholars have, for example, brings out their issues, you could have a section on research. You could actually keep track of, I mean, there are of course many publications which are made. For example, there is this Facebook IIT Kharagpur Facebook page, and there's a director IIT Kharagpur Facebook page, and there's a lot of very interesting research activity that gets reported there. So I think if you could just pick up some of the some of the very good work that people are doing here and present that to the undergraduate community in the same way as you, for example, present the placements. Okay, that's when the undergraduate community is going to realize that okay, this is as good as the other. So for example, if everybody sees in the newspaper that somebody has got a package of 1.5 crores, but hardly anybody would probably know that that IIT Kharagpur is the first institute to propose many of the soundest technological advancements in the last 20 years. So that's where the undergraduates here who are coming here, they have got really impressionable minds, I feel, and the thing that is going to get more weight is what is going to stick. So I think if research needs to be presented to them in a more I would say lucrative fashion, in a more exciting fashion at least. I mean, and I think that could make a lot of difference.
So do you think the undergraduate course curriculum also has a role to play in how we perceive research? And not just with respect to your department, but like as you probably had friends.
Yeah, I feel that one of the best ways to include undergraduates in research is through term projects. So a lot of courses in IITKGP right now seem to have a lot of term projects where people can actually do some research based on whatever they're learning in the course. So it's like, courses here are more like you somehow struggle through till your mid-sems, get through your mid-sems, struggle through end-sems, get through end-sems, and you are done. Right. But I think if a particular student is really interested in a given subject, then he or she should have the option to do a project in that particular subject. I think there is something else that has been introduced this year is something called a microcredit, where you can where faculty from outside are coming, and I think I still feel, I mean, I had this experience that most of the people who are coming in for these courses are still from the postgraduate community, because they know that their own areas of research, and they're probably able to align themselves more with these courses. But if, for example, the faculty advisors of the undergraduate community could at least let them know that these are some of the things that are going on, these are some of the things that you could do, and possibly I think in many of the technological societies that we have here, if more stress is laid on the actual technical aspect of it, rather than just presenting it, I would feel that automatically the undergraduate community would realize the importance of research.
Okay. Also, speaking of the role that professors play, right? You said that like the guide that you had a very good rapport with the professor. So I mean, this I think happens once you start interacting with the professor, and then right? But like there is a significant barrier for, I think, generally the undergraduate community to approach any professor from their department and just have a talk about like their course per se, like something like that.
Right.
So like, what do you think can be done at a department level
So I think the primary point of contact for all undergraduates is going to be their faculty advisors, and I think I do feel that the faculty advisors should really encourage people to come up to them, not only if they have some problems. I mean, they could come up with things that they want to do. For example, I my own faculty advisor always encouraged me to do research. Every time I would say that okay, I might go for a job, he would say, but then research has these opportunities. So he made me aware initially, and after that I went on to meet my guide. So I think the faculty advisor plays a very important role here. I think the student mentors who are there in the campus can also make a big difference. I mean, if, for example, an undergraduate student in the first or second year is afraid to approach the professor, at least he or she can approach his or her mentor. And I think the mentor can then tell them that, okay, approach this professor. He is the one who is going to really help you out. If you are really willing to work in this particular field, he's the guy to approach. And, this funda needs to go on. I mean, I think the funda that gets really percolated quickly is about how to, as you mentioned, I mean, how to get through easily, get a good job and get out of here. But the funda of how to actually make positive contributions in terms of research and technology here, that also needs to percolate. And I believe there are a lot of people who are really doing research, but that somehow that funda doesn't seem to get passed on. So I think through these two avenues, definitely it could be passed on to undergraduates.
Yeah, I think it was a very valuable talk. I mean, got your perspective, and I'm sure a lot of people will find it very useful.
Thanks.
So thanks a lot for taking your time and meeting with us.
Sure.
Thank you, Sikhar.